Welcome to Dr. Slaton Live, The Brain's Body, The Ultimate Experience. And we're talking about mental health still. And the question that I'm dealing with is, how do you teach a sense of feel? Now, that's something that I've been asked to discuss, a sense of feel versus a sense of. And so what I've been explaining is the environmental impact of self, other people, and the environment, and how your interpretation of contact can disturb the flow of information, experience, knowledge, comprehension, process cycles, because the environment creates a state. I call it a mind state because the environmental stimuli moves into the sense path and you respond based upon a fixed state of being, a mind state. And so that sense of can be a search for an identity, but in relation to the environment and not in relation to your sense of self. When I put this word to it, what is a sense of feel versus sense of? Now I said sense of, but listen, I'm talking about a sense of feel because that's different. That's your game changer. So when I'm dealing with a child whom has identity crises moving through homeschool, workplace networks, the reason why I ask them to understand how they feel things is because you want to awaken their sense of feel for self, their care for self. And in caring for self, you then teach them about the brain. And you ask them what it feels like. This word, learn. How does it feel to learn with me? That's an example. And in the process of teaching them what learning is, the experience of learning something, they're experiencing the brain. Same thing with live. But we're talking about a sense of feel for how you live. See, that's the game changer because you're asking them to receive the environment and expand upon it through signs of care for self in relation to the people they live with inside the home, the people they learn with inside the school, because you're trying to get them to put their brain in the lead of the body so they can process the contact interaction. Because when the sense path is damaged, it's difficult to interact. And when you can't interact through the hurt, pain, or sadness, then you can't transfer the information that has to be transferred through the experience. Now we're talking about reflection, but the reflection is changing because it's a sense of feel for self and the brain in the lead of the body. And because you have the brain lead of the body, now you ask the same question, how does it feel to learn with me? Now the child knows that they can change their response because they understand that it feels different. Because now they understand their sense of feel for self is connected to how they respond through feelings, emotion, thought, reflection, because you're teaching them brain talk. You're teaching them how to move through feelings of self to begin to realize how they function. Simply that, how they function versus a sense of. A sense of has nothing to do with your sense of feel for self in the brain. It is an environmental learning process cycle. I say again, the parent is an environment. The parent sends a child an instruction. The child gives the parent the response that the parent wants because the child is not reflecting in the fullness or the context of a synthesis. They're reflecting from the mind state that's fixed and giving the parent the response they know the parent is looking for. There's no creativity in the equation. When the brain is involved and they receive the instruction, watch your child change the way they respond because they're changed by the information flow, because they're feeling every minute of it, because they're processing. And when you're processing something, you're transferring it in the brain system. It's converting that energy, action, and feeling based upon the experience itself. And the experience itself creates a knowledge base. So the mind state is changing because the knowledge base is informing the sense of feel for self in the brain, you. And so you teach this in relation to staying grounded. Grounded because children, when you're working with children that have difficulty moving through contact interaction, you want to ground them in those four variables: home, school, neighborhood, workplace. For example, you have millions of foster care children have come through the system and just failed miserably, reached the age of 18 and exited without a safety net because at age 14, they knew that 18 was coming and they'd be on their own. But they have no sense or clue. And what I'm talking about is the pain, hurt, and sadness from not being with your biological parents and what that does to the sense and receive path. And so I'm saying to you, you address that by teaching him or her how to make contact in a home, to live. See what I just said? Because you're teaching them, brain on, learn how to live with me. Learn how to live with others. Now listen to what I'm saying. We're reducing homelessness. We're reducing school failure. Why? Because the next step is learn how to learn with your teacher. No, it doesn't matter that you don't like your teacher. What you have to understand is that you have to learn how to live with me. And one way you can do that is by doing better in school. So if you learn how to learn with your teacher, then you are doing better in school, which prepares you for responsibilities as you age into my home and you want to do things in your neighborhood or socially. Social engagement. You're learning how to interact. Because when you go to school, your contact is now interaction with other people, and you get to practice contact interaction, learning how to live and learn through the experience of self in the brain. And then you extend it, bring it back to the neighborhood, because this is where you must be able to think. And so you're teaching the child the brain's body learning system, because now they're grounded in understanding how to live in a home, learn in school, think in the neighborhood. Now, that's what social drift is. So most of the foster care children that I've worked with, even if you get them through school, the crises of the neglect or abandonment issues propel them into the streets, propel them into lower expectations, where they just drift into negative relationships and interactions. And it has a lot to do with your sense of feel for self and feeling the value associated with I'm worthy, because they're hurt and they're disadvantaged and they're trying to figure out, how do I live? How do I make it this way? Well, see, living without learning is not learning, is not living at all. Living without learning is not living at all. Learning without living is not learning at all. I know I twisted that all up because it is very, very simple. It's a learning system. So you got the neighborhood. You think through the people. And if you're teaching them, you think through the people because you want them to be on guard, but you don't want to have them so paranoid that they fall into the social psychological traps. No, you're teaching them about contact interaction. And in the neighborhood, when someone makes contact with you, you want the brain in the lead. You want them to investigate. Investigate means think it through. Think it through to a complete reflection with causal factors, because you're comprehending the consequences of that interaction. Because what are you doing? You're teaching them in brain talk. Talk to yourself. Listen to how you feel. Thinking through feelings. So you think through the things you feel. And what you're feeling are feelings, emotion, thought, and reflection. Backward, forward feed. And the neighborhood is the practice place to make sense of what you're experiencing. And if you have a good caregiver in the home that's doing this with you, or a good teacher who's doing this with you, then it's easier for you to practice improving your contact inside the home, even if you're working through negative people, You're able to move through them because your expectations is what we're talking about. Your self-care is what we're working on. The ability to improve your sense of feel for self, self-care, mental health. Moving from one environment to the next environment. And when I teach it to a child, I'm saying these are your test site laboratories. You go into the home to learn how to read and interpret action, behaviors, so that you can begin to feel more successful by teaching this person how to move through that negative energy and when to withdraw and let everything just unfold. The example is you're with a negative person who's always cursing at you, and you go into the environment, you engage, and then you withdraw to pay attention to their response pattern. And as you continue, you change because you are studying the actions, action learning. You're studying the behavior pattern of this individual. And because you know what you're trying to accomplish, you feel a sense of pride because you're reading their behavior and not falling into the traps that you were falling into before you begin to learn how to live inside that home with that person and move through them intellectually, intelligently, discipline, self-control. That's what we're talking about. So you go to the next step. It's the same thing with a teacher. That's what I'm talking about. The brain's body learning system is about self-care. Because when you talk about the brain's body, it sense and receive path research on the flow of information, knowledge, experience, back up, energy, action, feeling. And then what? Emotion, thought, reflection, not in that order, because simultaneously these things are already in the conflict of sense and receive path processing. But you know that you're moving through that emotion because you have the information processing, the experience processing, the knowledge processing, and the comprehension processing, because you are intentionally moving through the contact interaction to learn how to live, right? And in learning how to live, you're building the reflective capacity to use your knowledge base. And so in any one of those stages, you're now focused on workforce development, workplace development. I'm saying if you have learned how to move through your school in elementary, now you're in middle school and you're interacting in your neighborhood and you're successfully moving because people will come to you because you're hurt and disadvantaged. I'm talking about foster care children. I'm still talking about that population and other children who are disadvantaged moving through the school system. The school is set up. The system is set up. The children that respond to the curriculum get certain levels of protection when they have mentors working with them. I'm talking about your caregiver. I'm talking about a responsive parent. I'm talking about a responsive teacher that can help you navigate these relationships and put you in social groups that allow you to expand your ability to comprehend the experience of self and others so that you're not so damaged by the time you get to high school that you're in a gang and you're associated with criminality, right? So what am I talking about? I'm talking about how do we reduce family decline, school failure, delinquency, lack of employable skill sets, and poverty. Back when I started all this, people thought I was crazy because I'm talking about all five of those simultaneously with one child. But you see, you reach one, you teach one, because every child has to move through that family decline, school failure, delinquency, lack of employable skill sets. And if you're teaching in relation to home, school, neighborhood, workplace, you are teaching them how to move through. So let me cut it back and make it short. This is how I get kids graduated, because I teach them how to focus that anxiety. I teach them about what the experience of family decline, school failure, delinquency, lack of employable skill sets, because they're around it, they're experiencing it. And you're teaching about home, school, neighborhood, and you're taking them to field trips where they can see and experience. I would take a kid to a car dealership in a moment, just to teach them to understand the economics of participating, because you're teaching about home to school to workplace. How do you get there? How do you get around? You want them to understand the cost to live in this country. You want them to understand what it takes so that as they move towards the ages of emancipation, they have the knowledge base to understand why they're in the workplace and what it takes. Discipline, self-control, focus, my energy, action, and feeling. Long enough for me to understand what I'm actually experiencing. Get rid of that pain, hurt, and sadness. No, you don't lose it. You put it in your pocket. You dump it in your pocket, and you have to move forward with the new experience of self, the brain, other people, and the environment. See what I just now said? So the environmental perspective sense of is always working. Personality, attitude, character, right? Behavior. You're working through those. Okay, because that's character education. But what I'm talking about is, I'll give it to you a different way. What I'm talking about is personal, academic, social, occupational learning. That's what I just told you when I said home, school, name, workplace. So you're developing an economic process cycle to understand the experience of pain, hurt, and sadness and ways to dump that negative energy. You'll do an event. You will be mentored. You will do service learning. You will do these things because you're learning how to live with self in crises. This has been Dr. Slaton Live, and I want to bring it back. We're talking about mental health, self in the center, because self is the person's in crises. And you don't wait by telling the kid, you have to wait until you reach 12th grade before we can address your sense of issues with, I don't know who I am. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know where I belong. No, you deal with that up front, your sense of feel for self. Your sense of feel for self meets the brain. And now you're learning how. I said learning, right? Because the brain has been the lead. Learning how to live inside the home, learning how to learn inside the school, learning how to think inside the neighborhood, learning how to respond in the workplace. See what I'm talking about? Pay attention to the words. That's the brain's body learning system. And there's more to it than what I'm presenting to you. But I'm saying to you, we have to do it in such a way that we're building intellect, self-intelligence, so that children gain the confidence to participate in real world events and activities where they no longer isolate, because they're learning where they fit in through their sense of feel for self, being on, brain on, leading them through the experience of self in relation to other people, and thinking these emotions through. Thought, reflection. The mind is changing because you have the brain on, and the brain changes everything. It recreates. We're not talking about changing you. You evolve. You become more informed. You become more than what you thought you were, because your self-esteem, like James Brown said, your self-esteem is up here, not down here. Read the book. It's not down here because you're not living through a sense of. You're living through a sense of feel for self. There, I care about me. If I care about me, I'm living every day, become more informed so that I can participate. No, I'm operating. I'm a doctor before I even graduated from high school, because I am practicing learning how to live with my sense of feel for self. In this world, although I may feel alone, I'm not alone. And when I do that self-talk allows me to understand what's going on inside of me. And when I practice participating, I'm able to receive feedback, because I can look at the people. I've learned how to study people and realize what they're saying about what I need them to provide me in terms of information, feedback, and you didn't say anything to them. You just learn how to observe. You just learn how to listen. You just learn how to learn. You just learn how to help, and just learn how to lead. Okay, that's Dr. Slate tuning out. I want to thank you. Hope you enjoyed the session. We will be back shortly. Thank you.